just a little background on the network and the team. So the SAFE network is a protocol built by a team of engineers based in Scotland, and this is MaidSafe. So MaidSafe is the team that's in Scotland, and the SAFE network is the network that they built, the protocol. It was conceptualized in 2006 by David Irvine and began development a year or two later, and it was iterated through a few times. Initial funding for the company came from family and friends in small investments over about 6 years. And almost a decade later, there's hundreds of developers that are now interested in building applications for the network and also helping eventually to help maintain the core so that the team itself isn't the only team that aren't the only people that are maintaining it. So, what is the SAFE network? Here's some keywords: peer-to-peer, open source, totally secure, owned by no one, run by maths and logic, a self-managing network, decentralized platform, autonomous, anonymous, self-authenticating, serverless, cyberbrain, highly encrypted, distributed. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah. Well, that's what I'm kind of here to talk about. So the SAFE network is not blockchain technology, nor is it based on blockchain technology. And that's kind of what I think is a little bit confusing for some people, because they've been coming out at Bitcoin conferences, and I think that's been a little bit, and the way the media has been highlighting the technology that they've built, they've described it as Bitcoin as well. So there are two distinct protocols. Both the Bitcoin network and the SAFE network are solutions to the Byzantine general problem. How do they reach consensus? Well, the Bitcoin protocol uses a global ledger called the blockchain, and the SAFE protocol uses a complex network of nodes based on simple rules, trusted groups, and ranking systems. I'll go more into that in a little bit. So just like the Bitcoin network, Bitcoin is a currency behind the Bitcoin network. The SAFE coin has a token behind it as well. Tokens are obviously a really great way to bootstrap projects, and that's honestly why the Bitcoin network has gotten so big, is because we can all trade money on it. In general, money is a perfect first application for networks to kind of incentivize users and everything else that has come out of Bitcoin. So the MaidSafe, or the SAFE network, is actually a real decentralized internet, and it's based on the concept of distributed data storage and computing. So this is going into the differences between blockchain and SAFE network technology. So blockchain is for transparency. You can do all the things that you do on top to try to hide what's going on, like what Darkcoin is doing in Dark Wallet, but those are all just kind of like ways to work around the fact that it is a global ledger. Like, it was built for transparency. So the theory here is, wouldn't it be easier to obtain privacy in financial transactions and everything else if the network had the ability to be anonymous from the core, to as an account, as a user of the network, just being anonymous from the start? So I find it really interesting that a lot of the smartest people in the space really, they tend to like ants, and they tend to relate a lot of the networks that are happening with ant colonies. Andreas Antonopoulos specifically, and David Irvine, who's the creator of the SAFE network. So they're interesting because ants have a very simple set of rules that they can't really go beyond, but when they act together, they build this really complex network. Specifically in leafcutter ants, Andreas likes to use that metaphor because they actually produce their own food by cutting leaves and creating fungus. So how does the SAFE network work? This is kind of where it gets a little technical, so I'll try to stay on the higher end. So the network is comprised of nodes called vaults. Vaults are ranked within the network according to their health and reliability. So say you have a vault that you want to add to the network that is 2 terabytes. You have an external hard drive that's 2 terabytes, and you want to add it to the network, but you plug it into your laptop that you turn off and on like every night or a few times a day, you restart it. Compare that to a single terabyte hard drive that you have plugged into a Raspberry Pi that's running constantly and never getting turned off or disconnected from the internet. There's a very real chance that the vault providing only 1 terabyte will receive more SafeCoin rewards because of how because they're constantly staying connected to the internet. And this is really important because the vaults are saving chunks of files from people that are saving their files in the network. So it's really important that these nodes stay online, but I'll get more into that in a little bit. So each vault itself has personas. A persona represents a potential role that a vault can play in relation to other vaults. So, for example, there's a data manager persona, which is a role for managing integrity and availability of chunks. So if you're a vault that's a data manager, you're a data manager for another vault that's nearby, but not like Euclidean nearby. It's if you know this kind of stuff, it's based on XOR distance. So it's not based on like physical distance, it's based on nearby in terms of being able to calculate it. And similarly, the transaction manager is baked into the network, similar to how Bitcoin, the currency, is baked into the Bitcoin network. The transaction manager is what allows for the transfer between safe coins between users. So this is, I don't know if you can see it too well, but this is, I'm going to kind of walk through how a transaction works, and then this can kind of give you a good idea about how the system as a whole works. There's a lot of complex things that go into the network, so I'm not going to like talk about really technical things, but I'll try to keep it really high level. So we have Alice and Bob. Alice wants to send 50 safe coins to Bob over the Safe network. And by the way, that's the only way you can send safe coins. If safe coins are not on the Safe network, they're just, basically they would be like a proof that you own that coin, like you can make copies of the data file saying that you own it, but you can't transfer it without the Safe network. So Alice wants to send 50 safe coins to Bob. She first initiates this by telling the transaction managers, which are a handful of other nodes that are around her that are acting as these personas to facilitate this. She tells the transaction managers that she wants to send 50 safe coins to Bob. And they will return with the name of a transaction, which is not necessarily important for her unless she wants to use a third-party application. And this is actually where you opt into transparency. You can opt into like an application that will help you track your financial, what you're doing, or maybe like a third-party escrow service. This is where the transparency comes in, and making it not anonymous. So 50 safe coins are taken from Alice's wallet. The transaction managers then create a transaction in the network, which the third party can see if they're using it. At this point, it's a pending transaction, it hasn't completed. Then the transaction managers alert Bob about the incoming transaction. He acknowledges 50 safe coins are credited to his wallet, and the transaction is updated as completed. And over this whole process, this third-party validator, or whatever application you're using, can kind of hook into certain aspects to improve your experience if you're looking for that. But if you want to stay completely anonymous, you wouldn't use a third-party service. And again, like the transaction managers are clearly the key point here. They're controlling everything that's going on. And it's really important because this is kind of how the network as a whole works. So it works with these personas and nodes acting as kind of managers of things that are happening to a specific node. It gets really complicated, so I don't want to go into it too much. If you want to talk to me about it a little later, and there's also a lot of documentation on how it works on their GitHub as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SafeCoin economics. And first off, if you didn't know about the crowd sale, I'm just going to go over what happened really quick, just to clear things up. So it was the only opportunity to actually buy SafeCoin. It was a way to raise funds for keeping the project going for the next couple of years. We used actually a proxy token using the Mastercoin protocol to raise the funds because Safe Network isn't released yet. And it ended up, we ended up selling or receiving $6 million worth of mostly Mastercoin and then some Bitcoin within 6 hours, right from the start. And so at that point, there was a decision to be made to cut off the Mastercoin funding part because a few reasons, but a lot of people just weren't able to get in. The main reason was because Mastercoin, the exchange between Mastercoin and MaidSafe coin was automatic because it was using the Mastercoin protocol. But if you sent in Bitcoin, it had to be manually transferred. So everyone was just going to, all the Mastercoin people were going to buy literally everything. So it kind of had to be stopped. And yeah, so we have a lot of Mastercoins, and we don't really know what to do with them. So how do people earn safe coins on the network? So similar to mining, users on the network will be able to set up these vaults that I've been talking about, which either allocating part of their hard drive or maybe supplying an external hard drive that they already have and don't use, or you can buy one. And this is done by proof of resource. So proof of resource helps the network determine the ranks of vaults by calculating their health, which I went into a little bit earlier, which is a combination of different, so health is determined by several factors, including network connection, consistency, bandwidth, CPU, storage space, and then integrity checks are done when file chunks are called from the network to prevent someone from, say, turning on their vault, letting people store a bunch of things, earning a bunch of SafeCoin, and then turning it off. So when people actually get their data back from you, that's when you earn SafeCoin. Proving the fact that you're still connected to the network and able to supply the chunks that they need. And this is kind of just a little illustration about the cycle of farming. So the farmers are the vault holders, vault managers. They supply computing resources, which comprise of CPU, storage, bandwidth, online time. And the network constantly measures and verifies the resource. The resource provided must exceed usage. So if you're if you're providing a bunch of storage to the network, you're going to get at least that amount to save to the network, and then every user is going to get a little bit of storage. And and then you get safe coins based on your contribution to the network. And this is actually one of the more interesting part for me in terms of earning safe coins. So this is actually an experiment, also an experiment in incentivizing open source development. So developers, aka builders, will be able to create applications with an embedded SafeCoin wallet or contribute code to the protocol and earn SafeCoin. This isn't like a technical term, I'm just calling it proof of resourcefulness as the applications. this will help the network determine how useful an application is for users on the network. We haven't quite figured out how to determine that, but it will probably come in a combination of calculations and monitoring of the network, and a combination of that plus voting, which should be one of the very first applications built for the network. So, obviously you don't want an application that's just like using a bunch of the network, but not really providing much service. It's just doing a lot of things. You don't want people to be able to cheat the system. So adding that like human element of voting seems like a really good option for now. And but we're still trying to figure that out. And your input is definitely welcome in terms of the community. They want definitely community input. And there's a MaidSafe Foundation, which holds the tokens for distribution, which is also kind of a point that we're still trying to flesh out. We don't want it to be like a centralized group of people, so that's kind of one thing we're still thinking about. So the value of SafeCoin, above a certain threshold, which is to be determined, we still need to do the test nets to figure out what the best threshold would be. But users will be asked to pay for additional resources to the Safe network with SafeCoin. So it's a self-feeding system. With that said, you're paying SafeCoin to the network. So it's going to be a recycling coin. It'll be easier to determine how that recycles and the rate at which people are farming versus buying. So that'll definitely be an interesting thing to see happen in the test networks. But that's kind of the base usage of SafeCoin. But honestly, what I'm really excited about is the fact that it is truly digital cash. There is no global ledger to track you. This is an anonymous cryptocurrency that is going to provide so much value if you are able to get your money into this and just actually, send money to people without being put on this ledger. Unless you opt in, someone could make an application that's like a Bitcoin ledger type blockchain application where you can be a part of some sort of transparency. Say you're a charity and you want to be transparent, that's perfectly fine, but that should be definitely opt-in. And this is kind of my bold prediction. SafeCoin will be what Darkcoin wishes it could be, without any work other than the work that they've done to build the network. But there's no hurdles you need to move around with the Safe network. With a global ledger, there's definitely a lot of hurdles you need to move around to be anonymous. This is kind of just a general graph showing what we are predicting in terms of the value. So ideally, per the last slide, SafeCoin is expected to raise in value. And while at the same time, the cost of resources is expected to decrease in value over time, mainly because of this deduplication aspect. So if you say someone has a movie that they upload to the network, and you have the exact same movie, say you torrented something, you have the exact same file, you upload you try to upload the movie again to the network, it'll actually check all the hashes of the chunks and say, oh, this movie is already there. We don't need to upload it. You don't need to waste resources and space and SafeCoin or anything. So you just have access to this first file, these first initial uploaded chunks. So that's actually a really interesting point that we'll see what happens in terms of how much computing and storage that saves overall. Because imagine all the different movies that are just stored on servers right now that are just taking up all the space, even though they have, imagine Dropbox. How many times do you think Dropbox has uploaded the exact same file? It's just completely a waste. And so what else in terms of the network? There are endless possibilities. This is a really, truly distributed internet protocol. Anonymous secure Dropbox is the kind of the first initial reaction. I don't need to save my files to a central server. Okay, I much prefer being able to save my files encrypted and chopped up into chunks and spread out through an entire network. That's redundant and, provides all of these securities that I want for my privacy, and even public files. Like you don't want public files to be lost or corrupted. You want them to be safe. Anonymous private messaging. All of these applications are kind of similar to what people are trying to pitch for the Bitcoin network, but they could be a lot more efficient on the Safe network. It's kind of the prediction here and what we're trying to work out, especially in the test nets that are imminent. And anonymous private voting. So you can, voting on the blockchain is cool. You can still do that, but is it anonymous? Do you want to keep it anonymous? Do you want to be public about what you're voting for? With this, you kind of have a choice. And anonymous websites. That's actually really interesting to me, especially in terms of how the network works. So right now, if you visit a website and say you visit, Gmail or something, a website that's not fully prepared for a really high influx of visitors, and they have one day that they just get a lot of visitors and their server crashes and all these bad things happen. On the contrary, on the Safe network, the more people that visit a website, the faster it goes. So if there are a bunch of people accessing this website, that means that the chunks, the file chunks that you need to serve you the website pages are going to be in more places. So you have more access to them, and it's just going to be kind of perpetually faster. I'm kind of pitching this out, but maybe anonymous Bitcoin. If someone can make an application that can transfer Bitcoin to SafeCoin and automatically use SafeCoin as a protocol for sending anonymously, and then switch it back to Bitcoin if you want to use Bitcoin still, that would be a really huge opportunity if someone wanted to take that on. So these are just some interesting ideas. I think that's all I have. So thanks.